He had the same opportunity as everyone else, but unlike most people, he didn't realize that the most expensive decisions in life are rarely loud, dramatic, or obvious. Instead, they are quiet, almost invisible, hidden inside everyday habits that feel harmless in the moment. And his story didn't begin with failure. It began with comfort, with routine, with the simple and familiar phrase that has destroyed more potential than any lack of talent ever could: "I'll do it tomorrow." A sentence so small, so socially accepted, so easy to justify, yet so powerful in its long-term consequences that by the time you realize what it has cost you, the price is already too high to ignore. He lived in a time where the world had fundamentally changed, where artificial intelligence had removed barriers that once made success difficult, where knowledge was free, tools were accessible, and opportunities were everywhere, not just for the privileged or the highly educated, but for anyone willing to learn, adapt, and act. And yet, despite living in this era of unprecedented possibility, he remained stuck, not because he lacked intelligence, not because he lacked ambition, but because he consistently chose delay over action, comfort over discomfort, and consumption over creation. And at first, it didn't feel like a problem. It felt normal, because everyone around him seemed to be doing the same thing: scrolling, watching, planning, dreaming, but rarely executing. Every morning, he woke up with the same quiet intention to change his life, to start something new, to finally take action on the ideas that had been sitting in his mind for months, sometimes even years. But that intention dissolved the moment reality required effort, the moment uncertainty appeared, the moment he had to face the possibility of failure. And so instead of starting, he delayed, convincing himself that he needed more time, more clarity, a better plan, not realizing that clarity is not something you find before action. It is something you develop through action. And by waiting for it, he was unknowingly trapping himself in a cycle that felt productive, but led nowhere. He consumed content about success, about discipline, about the power of AI and how it was transforming industries, creating millionaires, and reshaping the future of work. And each video gave him a temporary sense of motivation, a brief emotional high that made him feel like he was moving forward, when in reality, he was standing still. And over time, that illusion became dangerous, because it replaced real progress with the feeling of progress. And the brain, unable to distinguish between the two, became comfortable with inaction. Meanwhile, somewhere else, someone with the same starting point made a different decision. Not a perfect one, not a fully informed one, but a decisive one. They chose to begin before they felt ready. They opened the same tools, explored the same opportunities, struggled, failed, learned, and continued. And that willingness to act, even imperfectly, became the single factor that separated their paths. Because while the first man waited for the right moment, the second man created it through action. In the beginning, the difference between them was almost invisible. Both were uncertain. Both lacked experience. Both made mistakes. But over time, the small actions of the second man began to compound, turning into skills, confidence, and tangible results, while the inaction of the first man also compounded, turning into missed opportunities, growing doubt, and a quiet but persistent sense of frustration. 6 months passed, and the first man noticed something subtle but uncomfortable. People around him were changing, learning new things, talking about opportunities he didn't fully understand, using tools he had heard about but never explored deeply. And while he still told himself that he would start soon, that he was just waiting for the right time, a part of him began to question that narrative. A part of him began to realize that maybe the right time was not something that would arrive on its own. 1 year later, the gap between them had widened. Not dramatically, but enough to be felt. The second man had built something, not necessarily a massive success, but a foundation, a skill set, a level of confidence that came from consistent effort. And most importantly, he had momentum. While the first man remained in the same place, with the same ideas, the same intentions, but now accompanied by a growing sense of urgency, a realization that time was passing whether he acted or not. This is where the true cost of procrastination begins to reveal itself, not in a single moment of failure, but in the accumulation of moments where action was possible but not taken, where opportunities were visible but ignored, where potential was present but not developed, and over time, these moments form a pattern, and that pattern shapes the trajectory of a life. In the age of artificial intelligence, this cost is amplified, because the world is not just changing, it is accelerating, and those who adapt quickly are not just progressing, they are compounding their advantage at a speed that makes it increasingly difficult for others to catch up, while those who hesitate are not just standing still, they are falling behind, even if it doesn't feel that way in the moment. 3 years later, the difference between the two men was undeniable. The second man had transformed his life in ways that once seemed unrealistic. He had built systems that generated income, developed skills that were in high demand, and created a level of freedom that allowed him to design his life on his own terms, while the first man found himself looking back, not at a single mistake, but at a series of small decisions that, when combined, had led him to a place he never intended to be. One evening, sitting alone, he experienced a moment of clarity that was both painful and necessary. He realized that he had not been lacking in potential. He had been lacking in action. That every time he chose to delay, he was making a decision. And every decision carried a cost, even if that cost was not immediately visible. He understood that the most dangerous aspect of procrastination is not that it wastes time, but that it disguises itself as harmless. That it convinces you that there will always be another opportunity, another moment, another chance, when in reality, opportunities evolve, moments pass, and chances are often taken by those who act first. This realization did not instantly transform his life, but it changed his perspective. It forced him to confront the truth that the life he wanted was not out of reach. It was simply on the other side of consistent action, and that the only thing standing between him and that life was the pattern of delay he had built over time. He began to understand that success is not the result of one big decision, but of many small decisions made consistently. That the difference between where he was and where he wanted to be was not a gap in ability, but a gap in behavior, and that this gap could be closed, not overnight, but through deliberate, repeated action. The world of AI, which once felt overwhelming, began to look different, not as something to fear or postpone, but as a tool, an opportunity, a leverage point that could accelerate his progress if he chose to engage with it. He realized that while he could not recover the time he had lost, he could still influence the time ahead, that the same principle that had allowed his inaction to compound into regret could allow his actions to compound into progress, and that starting late was still infinitely better than never starting at all. In that moment, the choice in front of him was clear, not easy, but clear, to continue the pattern that had defined his past, or to break it, to choose action over delay, to accept discomfort as the price of growth, and to finally take responsibility for the direction of his life. Because in the end, the truth remained unchanged. Every choice has a cost, whether you recognize it or not, whether you feel it now or later. And the only question that truly matters is whether you are willing to keep paying the cost of inaction or finally invest in the life you know you are capable of creating. Because the decision you make after this moment may not feel significant. It may seem small, almost irrelevant, but just like every other decision, it will compound, it will shape your path. And one day, when you look back, you will see that it was never just a moment. It was the moment, the point where everything could have changed. And the only thing that determined the outcome was whether you chose to act or to wait.